Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Adam. This is Open Late, and tonight I will be opening the Star Wars Vintage Collection Howler and Sabine Wren. This is, of course, the kind of wolf-like mount that Sabine rides on Peridia in her search for Ezra. Um, I think it's a cool mount, and I think it's a cool figure. And I've been picking up the vintage collection stuff sort of in anticipation of Cyberzoic, which I thought might arrive this week, but has been delayed. So I don't have mine just yet. But this felt like an appropriately Cyberzoic adjacent type of thing. And so I picked this up. Both because it's 1/18 scale and because it's got sort of an alien mount, which kind of suits Cyberzoic, or sort of fits what Cyberzoic is kind of doing. So grab this among all the other Star Wars vintage collection stuff that I've bought as Cyberzoic adjacent. Now with Black Series, I have my rules for collecting Black Series. For Black Series, I collect figures from The Mandalorian. I collect figures from Endor, basically Return of the Jedi / Endor, and then versions of Luke Skywalker. Now with the vintage collection, because I was sort of looking at these as potential sort of filler and world building to go with Cyberzoic, I'm kind of just looking for cool stuff. Though, if the idea is that I just want to get cool stuff that goes with Cyberzoic, then there's not really any rules. And so I've probably bought more vintage collection stuff than I intended to, if I'm being perfectly honest. But the problem with a vintage collection is, you get the vehicles and you get the figures, and they feel, I don't know. There's a certain nostalgia with the 1/18 scale with 3 3/4 inch figures that you don't really get with 6-inch figures. And I love 6-inch figures. Don't get me wrong. I'm primarily a 6-inch or kind of 112 or 7-inch, depending on what line it is, right? But primarily, the vast majority of my collection is sort of 6 or 7 inches tall. But I'm really enjoying picking up the 1/18 scale stuff, the vintage collection stuff, Joy Toy stuff, the Cyberzoic stuff, which is sort of imminent, which could show up at any day now, if Canada Post could just sort of get their business in order. But anyway, yeah, I'm sort of very much gone down the rabbit hole, the vintage collection rabbit hole, to the point that, like, I bought this because I wanted the mount, but then I was like, oh, but Sabine Wren on Peridia is pretty cool, but I think I probably need to get an Ahsoka to go with that, so I should get the Ahsoka from Peridia. And then I was like, well, I got Ahsoka. Ahsoka is cool, but I like droids too, so I should probably get Professor Huyang, because he's sort of part and parcel with Ahsoka. I think she travels on the three of them sort of go to Peridia together. But of course, when they go to Peridia, they face off, against Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati. So I should probably get those two. So I think I'm probably going to open all of these tonight. I will start with the Howler, and then kind of work my way through these other figures. But yeah, so here's the Howler. Vintage collection box, vintage inspired. So it's got the Kenner logo down there, which I think is a fun touch. It's kind of cool. You get the nice big sort of picture in that sort of vintage inspired black border. Letting you know that there's a Sabine Wren figure carded in here as well. On the top, you get just another picture of Sabine with the Howler. The same on here. You get her in different poses, and you get the you helmet on, helmet off. Different poses, different sort of ways that they've sort of accessorized that. You get some pictures on that side as well, and on the other side, and then on the back, um, you get very similar to what you get on the front, but you do get the Vintage Collection logo, which I now know only appears on the back side of the Vintage Collection stuff. And then the sort of pack out for what's in the box. So you get the Howler with some alternate legs, which is kind of an interesting addition or inclusion. And then Sabine Wren with her accessories there, and for all by all accounts, this is actually a really good Sabine. I got a different Sabine that everybody seems to complain about, which I thought was a perfectly fine figure, but I think this is looks cool. I like the poncho. I like the sort of cape, the soft goods to go with this, which I intend to use with Cyberzoic as well. So let's go ahead and get the Howler and Sabine Wren out of the box. I cheated and cut the tape already, so just to make it a little bit quicker. Not that it's arguably that much quicker. So that's how you get the Howler in the box. Sabine Wren is carded in there as well. Like I said, just sort of tucked in here safely, unpunched, of course, as they typically are for these. And the Howler, pretty basic, just sort of wrapped in some cardboard there with the extra leg parts taped in as well. What's the easiest way to get this guy? Probably this end. As long as this isn't taped shut. Maybe it was the other way. Maybe I should have gone the other way, because he does not want to come out this way. Go on, you stubborn thing. There he is. All right, there's the Howler in its pose there. Let me just quickly adjust this camera angle. I can tighten this up. Yeah, that'll do. No, that'll do. All right, so there's the Howler. That's kind of how he comes out of the box. Hasbro's done some great little sort of articulated figures, animals, pets, whatever you want to call them, for classified. So I'm kind of optimistic that this is going to work kind of the same as that. I'm seeing already like a weird thing going on here. What is going on there? The shoulder seems like it's way off. I don't know if you can see that or not. Can you see this like cracked piece of plastic right in here, right above where my thumbnail is? I think you could probably see that cracked piece. But the shoulder's sitting really wide on that ball joint. That does not look right. But strangely, I popped the other one off. I wonder if this just not cleaned up. Let's see if I can do this without cutting my hand off or cutting his leg off. Because I feel like that's just not cleaned up properly. All right, bear with me for a moment, because this is going to drive me crazy if I don't at least try to fix this. Yeah, it looks like there's just sort of excess plastic on here. Oh, but is it gonna come off? I don't know if it's gonna come off. That's the problem. Here, I'll pop this one off completely so you can see what I'm talking about. See how no, you know what? That peg is I think quite a bit further out. Is my eyes just playing tricks on? No, I think that one's wider. So I think there's an error here. I think there's something off about this one. But I mean, I think I can modify it. I don't think I'm gonna, lose much sleep over it. Let me just pop this arm back on. Let me see what I can do as far as popping this one back on ish. And it's weirdly, it's like it still fits, like it's still on there. It's fine. But it sits really awkwardly wide on the shoulder there. Eh, you know what? I'll fire Hasbro a customer service email and see what they say, but I'm not going to lose sleep over it. As I said, I could probably, if I wanted to really badly, probably modify it and get it to work just fine. So I'm not going to bother with that. Let's take a look at these legs first, and then I'll take a closer look at that. I was very distracted. My apologies. My sincere apologies. Sorry, and I missed a couple comments here as well. The Stoned Mandalorian Collector says that Howler looks awesome. It is pretty cool. It is pretty cool. And he says, I've been contemplating grabbing this set. I'm gonna say do it. I'm gonna say do it already. Just first impressions. I'm gonna say it's probably worth it. What's going on, No Chewing? Good to have you, buddy. I'm looking forward to seeing you very, very soon at Legion's Con. I'm leaving tomorrow night on a jet plane. Awesome sculpt. Yeah, it really is. And it's a cool, unique sculpt. And some of the classified animals are so rad. Yeah, and so that was what I was sort of thinking, picking this guy up. And I think the articulation is similar. The legs have a joint at the knee, and then they have a disc at the ankle, as well as rocker, so you can get sort of a good angle on that foot. And all the legs are on ball joint too, so you get good articulation, sort of front and back, and sort of out side to side. The only thing that I don't like, this tail doesn't look like there's much going on here. It looks like the tail is just sort of plugged in, maybe a ball joint on the end of the tail, so it can kind of go up a little bit or it can go down a little bit. But other than that, like, it can rotate, but I don't remember him running around like that. Maybe that's just more than we needed. Maybe having a little bit of articulation in the tail is all we need. I'm good with that. I'm happy with that. Articulated mouth, which is cool. So the mouth will open fairly wide. That might be as wide as it goes. That's not too crazy. It's no Cyberzoic Smilodon for sure. Articulation in the neck, so that's gonna go up. It goes up quite a ways and down quite a ways. And if I turn it, you're going to be able to see it. There's a huge amount of articulation. It looks like it's probably a barbell. So there's a ball joint in the head and then a ball joint into the torso. And it looks like it kind of, yeah. So when you sort of, there's a sort of key. How do I explain it? Kermit the Frog's eye. You know how Kermit the Frog's eye is sort of a line with like a circle in the center? That's the hole inside here. And so you can go up and down, this way, up and down very, very easily. And then there's sort of a sweet spot in the center where you can go left to right as well. You can't go as far left to right if you're lower down, because it's, slotted this way and doesn't give you that way as much. but if you hit that sweet spot, you do get some left and right for the neck, which is pretty cool. It's not a perfect figure. I mean, the articulation could be better. Admittedly, that some of the GI Joe classified stuff is probably arguably a little bit better than this is as far as articulation. But all in all, I think it articulates sort of as much as you need for what you're kind of paying and what you're probably looking for with this set. Some nice sculpting on the saddle as well, with some water and some bones, or I don't know what the bones are for. Some pouches, a sleeping bag or sleeping roll or something like that. Some stirrups, and the stirrups are, I believe, plugged in, so they can move around as well. Yeah, just altogether a pretty cool sculpt. As I said, a mount that instantly I thought was a pretty cool mount, a pretty cool looking character design, or creature design, I suppose, in this case, in the Howler's case. So there you go. The alternate legs allow you to have the Howler sit down or lie down, so you wouldn't probably get that out of the leg if they didn't give you an alternate. So this just sort of gives you the option to swap out the back legs and have him sit down like a good boy. Then, of course, we get Sabine Wren carded. This is a lovely carded figure. This is one I've noticed that some of the pack-in carded figures come on these wider cards. I don't know why they do that. I don't know what the point or the motivation is for that, why the card is wider than their standard vintage collection cards. But whatever, it doesn't matter. You get Sabine Wren from Ahsoka on Peridia there. And then the figure in there with the accessories, looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. On the back, we get what we normally get. So we get the figure out of the sort of the plastic. We get the card front again, and then we get a bio for Sabine Wren on the back, plus a bunch of legalese. All my vintage stuff comes off the card. So I'm going to go ahead and cut Sabine Wren off the card as quick as I can. I'll get her out, and then I will crack on with the other figures. And I'll do all the other figures in sort of like one go. I'll open them all and then chat about all of them. There's the card back with the figure off. That really cool, vibrant green. I like the vintage collection card backs. I like that I can keep them because they're just kind of flat card backs, and I've pretty good success with cutting these off. So there you go. There's Sabine Wren in the plastic tray. But who cares? Let's get her out of the plastic tray, because that is the point of toys, is to not have them in plastic. So I remember enjoying watching Ahsoka, but the weird thing is I've been going back and watching a lot of the live action Star Wars series, and finding that I enjoy some more than I remember, and sort of others less than I remember. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens with Ahsoka. I'm trying to figure out this soft goods tunic cape thing, because it's a bit odd. Like there's a flap on the front, Her arm goes through the side, and there's a flap. Sorry, a flap on the back, a flap on the front. Her arm goes through the side. I'm confused by how it's supposed to sit. Does it just go over her shoulder? I can't remember. Now I got to watch just to see what the sort of cape does in the show, because I genuinely can't remember. But let me see. How do I get it? Can I get it so that it's sort of off without taking it off? No, maybe it's like either on or off, I guess. Because I just want to look at that underneath there. So you get a really, really cool, vibrant figure underneath with the purples and reds and orange and white. And the paint isn't perfect, but at this scale, I'm not too particular about the very, very fine detailing that they are sort of adding in. You get the Rebel logo on one shoulder, pauldron on the other shoulder. You get that one. I can't remember what that one is, or maybe I don't know what that one is. But yeah, altogether, just a nice little figure, cool little figure, and good paint apps where they've got them. As I said, it's not super super crisp, but I mean at this scale, I'm not surprised. It'd be hard to get this scale perfect with a ton of detail. So, yeah, so that's that. Let's you know what, we'll yeah, I'm gonna show the cards for the other Ahsoka figures, then I will tighten up the angle on this again, because I realize it's a very sort of wide shot for figures that are going to stand that tall, and then I'll sort of take a better look at Ahsoka, as well as Sabine Wren, as well as the other ones. So starting off, I will just slide her off to the side there. Starting off with the Ahsoka Tano Peridia. So this is, of course, once she's arrived in Peridia, she's got her sort of white gray outfit on, as opposed to like the blue one that she wears earlier in the series. This is this to me is just sort of a very simple card. It looks okay. It's not amazing, but they're all shots from the show, so I guess you kind of take what you can get. The figure though looks quite good, and I'll be honest. Normally, I don't watch many reviews for figures, but in this case, this figure was sort of stood out to a lot of people that collect vintage collection as one of the better figures recently. So I thought, you know what, if I'm gonna get an Ahsoka, I'll get one that's a little bit different. So anyway, that's why I picked this one. Came from Amazon with a big old sticker on it. The card's kind of bent up, and creased and stuff like that. And you see that crease right there. Corners are like busted and whatever, but who cares? I'm gonna open it. So that's the Ahsoka. Let me get this guy out of the way too. Professor Huyang. Now, I love droids, and I love Huyang as like the sort of lightsaber building instructor. I actually really like this card. This picture of Huyang on the ship is pretty cool. I mean, all the little stuff that he's got on his belt, which they don't do a fantastic job of, as far as sculpting, let alone paint apps on this figure. But as I said, I like droids, so that's why I picked this guy up. And then on the back, same thing. You get the figure off the card, and then a little bit of a bio. Huyang, of course, being the Jedi Order's lightsaber construction teacher for forever, which I just think is a really, really cool concept. Especially to have a droid that, droids have a bit of a mixed rep, in Star Wars. Some people like them, some people hate them, some people don't like them in their cantinas. But I really like droids, so that was a good choice to get that one for me. Balin Skull. Again, an okay card, but really this one's about the figure, and he looks fantastic. Very menacing, very ominous with that sort of patinaed armor that he wears and that really big old thick broadsword of a lightsaber. Yeah, very, very excited for this figure. Very tragic, that the actor who played Balin will not be back for season 2. Obviously, the tragic passing means that he can't, but I thought he was absolutely fantastic in Ahsoka. And I'm very interested to see what they're going to do, with the replacement actor. And I'm glad that they did replace him and didn't just sort of try to write him out and, probably cut Balin's story short. So, and then Shin Hati, again, the card's fine. It's a picture. They're probably standing next to each other in the same scene or something like that. They just picked that scene. Like, there you go. Not much going on the card, which is, again, fine. I'm going to keep them and hold on to them because they're numbered. Vintage Collection has the numbers up in the top corner right there. So I'm going to kind of file them in order. But anyway, the first impression, I'm looking closely at this for the first time. That face doesn't look like this face doesn't look like this face. But that's okay. It's tiny. Yeah, I'm never going to look that closely at it anyway. So anyway, these are the figures that I'm going to open. Thank you for enjoying, or thank you for waiting while I went through the very, very boring explanation of what you're looking at. Jeff Morris is here. Good to have you, buddy. Good evening to you as well. Brian Brink says, unfortunately, Ahsoka wasn't good for me. Surprisingly, I liked Acolyte, though. I enjoyed Acolyte. I just recently finished rewatching Acolyte, and I thought it was pretty solid. I don't love the High Republic, so it didn't land for me in the same way that I think some of the other stuff does. But as far as the quality of the Acolyte just as a show, I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty decent. I no complaints. Ahsoka, Ahsoka's one that I'm gonna have to rewatch. When I rewatched Obi-Wan, I don't think Obi-Wan holds up. I think Obi-Wan was good because I think Obi-Wan was good because people wanted that story, but I don't think the series itself really. I don't know. But Ahsoka, like I said, I'll rewatch it and sort of give it another go and sort of see. Especially since season 2 is coming, I think sooner rather than later at this point. So I'm going to just cut all of them off the cards, all in one go, and then I'll take them all out and take a look at all of them. I feel like I've opened so many of these recently that I feel like a fishmonger, like filleting fish. I feel like I'm pretty efficient, but I do it pretty quickly, and then I do it quite cleanly. Get as much of the plastic sort of clean off the card so that I can keep that card with minimal damage to the background on the card as well. One more. That's it. Nearly there. Oh, there's a second. I didn't notice this, but Hu Yang got all crunched up there. But who cares? I'm throwing this part out anyways. It doesn't matter. Part of what I liked about Ahsoka might in fact be what some people probably didn't like about Ahsoka. Now, I'm not about to go and buy a bunch of those zombie troopers, but the zombie troopers were a little bit of a weird thing, you know, even for Star Wars that doesn't really have any rules and they can kind of do whatever. I'm still I know that in you know, extended universe, you know, non-canon Star Wars has zombies. It might even be canon. I don't think it is. But they you know, they've done zombies before. They've done zombie stormtroopers before. But there was some things that I just, yeah, I'll have to go back and watch it because you know, it is entirely possible that it was just that I was excited to see X-Wings and then I was excited to see you know, the Rebels, you know, live action Rebels basically. Let's see. And Brian says, I have a feeling Ahsoka season 2 will be a lot better now that all the character introductions are out of the way. Yeah, that's a good strong sort of possibility that, you know, all the characters that that we need to know for the series to kind of work have now, in theory, you know, assuming they don't just add a bunch more, have all been sort of introduced to us. So put the Howler there for now. Am I? Or am I going to put him over there? I think I'm going to put him over here. And I'm going to do this. That'll work. I think. Does that work? That'll probably work better. There we go. That'll do. All right. Yeah, we get it. You like zombies, especially in space. Yeah, I do. And I mean, like I said, that part for me in Star Wars didn't land perfectly. But by the same token, I actually really like that they did it. You know, that they're doing something a little bit different. And I think maybe that's part of it, is that I can totally understand people that don't love what they did because it feels off, or it feels different, or it feels like it's, you know, not my Star Wars. I think Ahsoka was the most not my Star Wars, with the magic, with the witches, with the zombies, with the space whales, But I like that stuff. And I mean, it's a whole galaxy. So there's bound to be some wild stuff. If there's lightsabers and Ewoks, I can wrap my head around witches and zombies. But anyway, we were looking at this before I opened up all the other figures. So let's take a little bit more look at this. She's also got some detailing on her wrist gauntlets as well, which is very very cool. As I said, I love that Sabine's sort of got all these colors and just sort of how vibrant the figure is to sort of match her personality and stuff like that. And she gets the purple hair as well, which is cool and very, very well done. This head sculpt, this face sculpt at this size looks surprisingly not accurate. I mean, it's a tiny little action figure face, but this looks surprisingly good for the size. As I said, the Shinhari I don't think quite nails it, but Sabine I think is a pretty decent likeness for the actress, whatever her name is. I don't know her name. I admit I don't know her name. And I also admit that this should probably be tighter. There we go. That'll be better. Accessory wise, we get the helmet, which has the viewfinder piece that slides right down like that. This is not a helmet, though. This is an alternate head. So the version of Sabine Wren that I have, which I think is perfectly adequate and perfectly fine, is a helmet. It has a helmet, and the helmet sort of goes over top of the head. And people complain that the proportions are off. Their head looks gigantic. My answer to that is it's a 1/18 scale action figure from a made up character. It didn't bother me in the slightest, but this one looks really really good. Paint apps are great on this one. As I said, it's an alternate head, so you just pop Sabine's head off, pop the helmet on, and away you go. She's sort of more Mandalorian. Now, it doesn't the barbell actually is included in here, so you pop the head plus the neck piece off, and then that just pops right on, which is nice. I think I suspect that it's probably easier to do it that way than the other way. I have no scientific basis for that, but I'm sticking to that explanation. We get two pistols, and I believe we've seen these before. Pretty standard for Sabine figures. I don't know if they're newly molded specifically for this figure or not. We get two lightsabers. We get the lit up lightsaber, which I believe, they do a translucent plastic and then paint the hilt on that. And then you get that sort of more glowy, translucent blade. And then they do the alternate unlit hilt, which is typically sculpted a little bit nicer, a little bit more detail, and then a little plug on there so it can plug on her belt. She's got a little hole in the belt for that to plug into, and the pistols will tuck into the holsters as well. The little lightsabers are so great, though. They're so well done. Speaking of lightsabers, we've got more with Ahsoka as well. So there's Ahsoka. That face is pretty darn good as well. I would say at that scale, I don't know that you're going to do much better than that. It's smaller than a thumb, and that amount of detail in that scale is pretty awesome. Now, knowing what I know about how this process typically works, I mean, this would be 3D print or modeled in a 3D sort of modeler. They're not going to sculpt this at this scale, to sort of get it right. It will be sculpted in a 3D in a computer, and then that file would get sent, and then it would get cut into a steel mold. But still, like, it's done really, really well. And I don't, while the printing is done very well as well, the eyes look fantastic. And as I said, at that scale, that's really, really impressive work, and not easy to do and not cheap to do it that well either. But yeah, she looks good. Um, the rest of the figure, I moving along, the rest of the figure looks pretty good as well. I like these big sort of billowy, flowy pants. I've seen them, we've seen them. You've probably seen them as well on a few different figures, both in this scale and in 6-inch scale. And I've seen them in different lines as well, and they get executed, to different levels of success, depending on who's doing them. I think the way that they have done them so far with Black Series, and I'm gonna say with Vintage, well, not so much with Vintage Collection, but this is a good effort. I'm gonna give them a gold star for effort because they sort of try to make it so that the sculpt, gets sort of covered up. But at this scale, it might be a little bit harder. At the 6-inch scale, I was quite impressed with how well they did it. If you really want to see something like this done right, the SH Figure Arts Demon Slayer is phenomenal. A phenomenal example of sort of how you can do that. But at 1/18 scale, at a figure that's sort of this price point, I think they did a pretty good job. You do get articulation there, so that does rotate sort of at the pivot point. And then you get, pretty good articulation as well for a single jointed knee. That doesn't look so good. The bent knee is got a big old disc in there. And from the side, when you bend it, you can see that the sculpt gets broken up pretty badly. But as I said, at this scale, I'm certainly going to be a little bit more lenient, a little bit more forgiving. And at this price point too, you're talking about, $20 or less. So there's not a huge amount of there's not a huge amount of money to be made, to be perfectly honest, in a figure this scale, since they cost pretty much the same as a 6-inch figure to make. We get 2 lightsabers with Ahsoka, both lit, no unlit lightsabers. Now, of course, these are the white bladed lightsabers that Ahsoka is sort of famous for. Done basically clear. If I have a nitpick, I would say that there coulda, shoulda, maybe been some color in here, or sort of something mixed in to give them a little bit more color. When you're sort of looking at them, they kind of look white, but when you look at them closely, I think they're just clear. I think they've honestly just gone with clear plastic. There's not much color in there, and what color there is, is very little. So, but maybe you can't do translucent white. Maybe that's not as easy as I'm imagining that it is. So. Space zombies are cool. Hopefully more news on Space Zombies from Mars very, very soon. We got lots of stuff to share sooner rather than later. We're just sort of trying to decide, when to announce things and sort of how to announce things. But yeah, we got some big news sooner rather than later. Anyways, Huyang looks great. I think the use of different colored plastics is sort of done to a good effect here. There's sort of a goldish tan pearlescent metallic kind of color for the top part. There's a matte flat chocolate brown for the apron and sort of the pockets. If anything, I think there could have been a little bit of paint apps on here. But that being said, you get paint apps for sort of some differentiation on the parts. You get paint apps on the head, which look good. There's paint apps on the backpack. His legs are painted pretty well as well. So I guess it's sort of, they put them in where they can, but you're not going to get every little deco hit on a figure. Again, on a figure this size, this price point, there's just not enough in the budget, I don't think, to like paint the wires, right? You're looking through here and their wires kind of like C3P. Imagine C3PO. There should be a little bit of detail through there. There should be more detail on the apron. Maybe a little bit more detail paint wise on the head as well. But as I said, it looks pretty good. Articulation is good. Which I'm glad because he's a robot. You get some articulation that you wouldn't necessarily normally get. Because he's a robot, you also get these arms. So they're actually, you get two. I guess you get two sets. You get the arms sort of like folded up in the backpack there, but then okay, I see what's going on there. You get let's look at his accessories first and then we'll kind of come back to that. You get a lightsaber hilt, presumably. I don't remember him having a tool that looked like this, so I'm just going to assume that that's a lightsaber. You get a data pad of some sort. I don't know what the orientation is. I'm going to have to watch Ahsoka again just to see what to do with these accessories. And then you get these arms. So on his backpack, or whether that's just his back, I don't know. He has these arms that sort of stick out, that come out. So I think the backpack pops off. Yeah, that's kind of cool. So the backpack pops off. It's keyed, so it'll only go in one way. But it slots in nicely with these little flanges so that it's, gonna, well, we'll see in a sec here. I gotta try to match the orientation of these. So these arms will just pop off. You can put the other ones on. I'm very curious what the 6-inch version of this is like, whether these are articulated or how that works. Because I would have liked these to sort of come out so that he could sort of have 4 arms. But, pretty cool nonetheless. I think for the most part, I'm probably not going to use these because they're not articulated, or at least not articulated in a way that I can kind of do anything with them. His arms, are articulated just fine. He's got articulation at the shoulder, at the elbow, and at the wrist. But these ones just, you can go forward or back, but they don't really fit. Maybe I could, hold on. Maybe I got them on the other way. Maybe they'll look better. Seems more like that's how they would work. But yeah, but then they don't go forward. So they sort of butt up against that thing there. So I don't know. I mean, again, I can't remember how his arms worked in the show. I do remember when the arms popped out and he did the lightsaber training, but I don't remember it vividly enough to remember like how they looked, how they worked. Anyway, Hu Yang looks cool. I like droids. Not as much as I like Ewoks, but I do like droids a lot. He is not going to stand up, I don't think. Maybe he will for a minute. All right, moving on to the big bads of Ahsoka. Well, are they the big bads, or maybe they're just sort of the gray area? All right, first impression of Baylan. This figure looks good. He's sort of thicker. He just feels heavier in hand. The patina on the armor looks fantastic. The armor itself looks really, really good. There's like texture on the skirting. The skirting is soft plastic, not soft goods, so it's gonna, it's. I think in this scale, if you're gonna do it nice and soft like this for something like a skirt, that's the way to go for sure. Um, Articulation is what you'd expect. You get the articulation at the shoulder, you get the articulation at the elbow. The elbow rotates as well. Hand spins, and it's on a vertical disc, which is good for a lightsaber wielding hand. Both of his hands are on vertical discs, which is very, very good. He's got his pauldrons that sort of float. They kind of plug in to the torso so that when the arm moves around, that is not, it can move with if you want it to, but you can kind of just tuck it out of the way too, so that it's not going to impede any motion for the figure whatsoever. Very, very well done, very well executed. The boots look fantastic. He's got sort of those big stomper boots. Is that going to limit articulation? Yeah, a little bit. The boots, the foot's not going to go back too much. Without, I don't know, maybe if you heat it up, you could probably get a little bit more, but yeah, articulation in the legs is pretty decent too. You got a thigh cut. The boot, or the lower leg is on a pivot at the disc as well, and is sculpted in a way that you're, again, kind of like Ahsoka, you're going to get above 90, but then that skirt's going to get in the way. So I don't know that you're necessarily going to want Balin to have his knee kick above 90. So that's probably sufficient. Is he going to stand? He should stand. He's a lot more solid. Again, 2 lightsaber options. You get the orange, the translucent orange is very, very dark. It looks very, very good. His hilt is really cool too. Again, as I said, very heavy looking, very broadsword inspired, and then an alternate that'll clip on his belt as well. That's got the peg in the bottom, so that'll go on his belt, which is rad. I mean, if you're gonna have an unlit one, it's gonna be unlit on the belt. So having that peg is, to me, it's pretty genius. I love that they do that with the Black Series as well as the Vintage Collection stuff. And last but not least, Shinhari. She just looks sad. It just looks sad. Sadder than I want her to look. I mean, the actress kind of has that look about her. But that notwithstanding, I mean, this is probably the weakest of the heads, the weakest of the representations of the actors themselves. And this is going to have, the same articulation as those ones do. So you get the articulation at the elbow, you get the articulation at the wrist. This skirt isn't as soft as Balin's, which is a bit of a pain in the butt, but she does have, the early Vintage Collection stuff just had a forward and back for the hip, but this is, on a ball joint, so you're going to get decent articulation. And again, you don't need crazy articulation for some of these characters. I would say Shinhari included. So she's got sort of the articulation that you probably need, but no more. You don't get a ton of extra. You get what you get with these 4-inch figures, unfortunately. But still super fun to play with, so that's really all that matters, or at least to me. She gets an orange lightsaber as well, and she's got a pretty cool kind of modern hilt. The modern hilts all have way more character than the vintage stuff did. The original trilogy hilts are pretty basic, but that was just because that's what they could make. They didn't know what they were doing, essentially. And this one, again, more detail to the unlit hilts and the peg on there as well to clip on her belt. So there you go. There's sort of the Peridia collection, which what more do I need? Do I need Thrawn? Do I need the witch? Do I need the zombies? I don't know. We'll see. Stay tuned. I am off to Legion's Con. I leave tomorrow. So I probably won't have as many videos, for the weekend. And I'll have to sort of get right back into it. I might not have another video until next Wednesday, but I'll be back next Wednesday to do another live unboxing. What I'm going to unbox, I don't know. My Cyberzoic stuff will probably be here by then, so there's a very, very good chance I'll unbox some Cyberzoic stuff. Let's see, Brian Brink. On the Black Series, the backpack arms pretty much work the same way, but they will go forward over his shoulders. Okay, so that's... I feel like that could have been a deluxe figure, and they could have done, better articulation or something, but yeah, not by much, though. That's a bit of a bummer. All right. Well, one last thing before I go. I realized that I've got the Howler and that she's supposed to ride it. I feel like I want to get Sabine. Blasters in on the Howler. I'll clip this on the belt too. Because why not? Probably going to fall off as soon as she gets on, but as soon as she mounts the steed. But should probably heat these up before I try to put it on the mount. But who cares? Let's just do it. Let's live dangerously. Shall we? Bend her arms without heating. Just bend them all. They're toys. They don't break, right? And I'm sure I can do a much better job of this if I heat it up and take the time and kind of pose it and stuff like that. But for the sake of, what does she look like just sitting on the mount? Ah, there she is. I'd say pretty darn good. I think that's a pretty cool, honestly, like I said, with Black Series, I have some rolls. With Vintage Collection, I kind of don't. I kind of just buy what's cool. And I will say that Ahsoka, I think Ahsoka gave us, aesthetically, character-wise, some pretty cool visuals. Some stuff that, while it very much feels like the Star Wars that we know, I think there's some stuff that's a little different, a little fresher. So yeah, I'm digging it. I'm digging these vintage figures. I'm digging Ahsoka, and I'm looking forward to season 2. Anyway, yeah, I'll be at Legion's Con this weekend. If you're at Legion's Con, come stop by the table. I'll be at the Spiro Toys table against the back wall, right sort of in the middle of the aisle. So come say hello. Come chat. We can talk Animal Wars of the Kingdom. We can talk Space Zombies for Mars. We can talk Star Wars. Whatever you want, come through, hang out. I'd be happy to say hello to you in person, in real life. As I always say, it is way more fun to open toys with friends. So thank you guys for being here and hanging out. Whether you're in the chat or whether you're watching the replay, thank you for watching. You could be doing literally anything else, and you're allowing me to steal this time away from you that you're never gonna get back. But anyways, talk to you guys soon. Bye bye.